Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study. A plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. That's right, this is a verse by verse, chapter by chapter study through the entire Bible. We are studying the book of Matthew, and we are um, in chapter 5. And I want to get into, I started what is commonly known as the Sermon on the Mount, but I want to get into, I'm going to cover this. I'm going to really go into this because there are some, I think there's some insights here that is telling for us, okay? And I'm looking up here. I think I got a lot of my kinks out. Um, okay, now Matthew chapter 5, as you remember, you go back to chapter 4 where Jesus um, goes around Israel preaching and teaching the kingdom of God, healing the sick, casting out devils. So he's amassed a large crowd, and the crowd comes to him. And as the crowd comes to him, let's jump right into it here. The crowd, as they follow him, I'm going to start back at chapter 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read verses 1 through 16. I'm going to cover verses 1 through 16. But I want to go back and get you so you can get the kind of the full picture. Uh, the full picture of what Jesus is saying here. All right, here we go. So verse 5, verse 1 says, when he saw the crowds, he went up on the mountains, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to teach them. Now, who is the them? Well, the them is the disciples. Who are the disciples? The crowds. They made up the large crowd that began to follow him. Now, this is important because Jesus now begins to teach them. And I'm going to say he's teaching them what his standard of righteousness is, what his criteria for being his disciples. So verse 3 says, the poor in spirit are blessed, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Also, by the way, I am reading from the Holman Christian Standard Bible. This is my favorite translation. I do realize that people like the King James, New King James, and then other translations. I like the Holman Christian Standard. Okay, so he says, the poor in spirit are blessed. And so verses 3 to 9, really Jesus gives what character we should have. In other words, to be his disciples when we come to him. Now, you may think that's not relative, but it is extremely relative today, given how certain mindsets are in Christianity. That there is a me, right? There is, instead of being poor in spirit, people are basically saying, no, you're kind of the center. You're the center of the universe. Well, Jesus is saying to them, if you come to me, then these are the qualities, these are the qualities that you ought to possess. The poor in spirit are those that are what? Empty. The poor in spirit are blessed, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Those who mourn and those who mourn are blessed. Anytime you come into a revelation, a true revelation of God, it will cause you to mourn. You will realize, you will see how wretched you are. But notice what he says, you will be comforted. The gentle are blessed, for they will inherit the earth. I'm always amazed how now people are so dismissing this part, that harshness, brashness. You hear people who say that the reason why they like a certain the president-elect is because of how harsh and how brash he is, because he speaks his mind. Well, Jesus said, the gentle are blessed, for they will inherit the earth. Those who hunger and thirst for righteousness are blessed, for they, excuse me, they will be filled. I think we always should have a hunger and a thirst in our hearts for God's word, for God. Verse 7, the merciful are blessed, for they will be shown mercy. The pure in heart are blessed, for they will see God. Now, we're going to get into a lot of these other things as we go on, especially the merciful. When he says the pure in heart are blessed, for they will see God. And the idea is, when people sometimes say that God knows my heart, that's true. That could be your worst enemy. But if your heart is pure before God, notice he says you are blessed, for they will see God. The peacemakers are blessed, for they will be called the sons of God. And that's, again, when I look at today's climate, I rarely see these qualities, these godly qualities, being portrayed. The peacemakers, that's what we're here for. Then he says, those who are persecuted for righteousness are blessed, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And you are blessed when they insult and persecute you, and falsely say every kind of evil against you because of me. Be glad and rejoice, because your reward is great in heaven, for that is how they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Now, persecution is a part of your godly walk. Paul says that if you live a godly life, you will suffer persecution. More on that later. Verse 13, he says, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt should lose its taste, how can it be made salty? It is no longer good for anything but to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city situated on a hill cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket, but rather on a lampstand, and it gives light for all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, so they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Now, I'm going to really unpack these three verses here. Let's go back to verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. This statement tells us why, well, actually, it's 13 and 14 tells us why we're here on the earth. You ever think about, or at least I think about, when we got saved, when we became Christians, why didn't we just go to heaven? Why not just go straight to heaven? After all, heaven is good. Heaven is right. I mean, there are a lot of people that claim, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are people who claim that they've been to heaven. No, I do not believe any one of them. Okay, I don't believe any one of them. And let me just tell you why. First of all, it's built into your story that heaven is good. In other words, you will never hear someone say, well, I went to heaven and, there was the ghetto part or the crime written part, right? Or there was sadness. So literally, you just kind of just pick up whatever your story. And trust me, a lot of times, these people who claim that they've been to heaven, that's what they do. They make up. They just kind of made it up. And here's what I want to say. Especially, too, the more details you give about heaven, that almost tells me you're just making it up as you go. We're going to see as we move through scriptures, as we move through the New Testament and the Old Testament, that we get glimpse of the supernatural, we get glimpse to the other side, the spiritual realm, and rarely will you find detail. In other words, the idea is a glimpse. And one reason why is because God's focus for us is here on this planet right here. But he does give us a glimpse. So when you see people who give these grand details about heaven, okay. And I know one guy claims he's been to heaven and he saw his home, his mansion being built, and all the Italian marble being imported in from wherever. I mean, he literally said all of this stuff right here. But my point is this: heaven is still good, and it is the eternal hope that we have. So why is it that we don't go to heaven? Right? In other words, get saved, boom, we go to heaven. Now, if you live a prosperous life here, that this life, and we all live in it, and we all have our hope to be blessed. Now, some people despair in life, so the extreme side that they take their lives. Others, and I want to say, even if you buy into a lot of the theology that you're supposed to be wealthy, at some point we will get into that. That none of that life still would compare to you going to heaven. And I'll give you a little secret, because a lot of the people that claim to be prosperity teachers, I know they are prosperity teachers. I'm saying their theology that claims that you're supposed to, as an inheritance from God, that everybody's supposed to be prosperous. All you have to do is just follow the certain principles, certain laws. If you do those things, you're going to be prosperous. The reality is that's just simply not true. The theology itself is not true. Now, those men and women, they're rich because you give to them. They have made their money through marketing, processes. You made them rich. And isn't it interesting that out of all of the teaching, and they still teach it, the laws of prosperity, that if you give, that you're supposed to receive 100-fold return. Who had to receive this 100-fold return? If you tithe according to them, right? Hold your envelope up and you recite a kind of a redone prayer based upon Deuteronomy 26. Where is the windows of heaven opening unto you, pouring out a blessing that you cannot receive? So who has this prosperity? Right? Now they have it. The prosperity preachers have it. And those who are already wealthy, those who have already put business principles and all that together, but it's not because of the teaching itself. But here's my point. Even those teachers, in all of their glory, still fall prey to the curse that's in the earth. Pretty much every one of the prosperity teachers who have passed away, every one of them have passed away through an illness, through cancer, COVID, car accidents, or some kind of tragic accident. All of them. But let's just say, even with that, so here's my point. So even though you would have that prosperous message, heaven is still better. And I think you would agree. Heaven is still better. Okay? Heaven is still better. So, if heaven is still better, why don't we go to heaven? Right? In other words, regardless of the teaching, regardless of the prosperity message, and let's just say, even if you achieve that, you would certainly agree, and every one of them certainly agree, that heaven is still better. Because in heaven, there is no pain, there is no curse, there is no sorrow, there is no crying. That in itself, even if you were poor in heaven, that in itself would be worth it. So my question is, why don't we go to heaven? Why don't we go to heaven when we become Christians? And the reason why is because Jesus leaves us here in heaven. Jesus leaves us on earth. We have a purpose. So what is the purpose? You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt should lose its taste, how can it be made salty? It is no longer good for anything but to be thrown out and trampled on by men. Now, to fully understand this, and again, I'm going to unpack this because this is something we should understand. This is also going to answer some questions about why, right? When people ask hard questions, why does God allow evil? Now, the questions are more complex to answer because oftentimes they certainly have to be satisfied. The why to a lot of questions is, and let me go back and answer the simplest one. Why don't we, how is it we don't go to heaven when we become Christians? That would be the easiest way, right? We've gotten saved. We've escaped the wrath of God through Jesus Christ. So why not go straight to heaven? And the reason why is because we are here to be, one, the salt of the earth, and two, we're here to let our light shine. We are the light of the world. So that's the quick, easy answer as to why we are here. We're not here to prosper. We're not here to, in other words, that's not the sole reason. That's not the reason why. And the reason, let me tell you this, not every person, not every believer will prosper and have a good life. Some people are born into a war-torn society. Some people are born into communism, dictatorships. Some Christians, even in this day, suffer persecution. So why does God leave us in those situations? Because I also have to say, we're not always going to get delivered. Now, I know there would be books that I could write, and I could title them Living Your Best Life, Your Best Day, right? Your best dreams, your dreams come true. Sell hundreds of thousands, millions of copies of books. But that's not the truth. Not everybody's going to live that. And not, by the way, not even the ones who write it are not always living what you think that they're living. But here is the thing. We are all here for a purpose. Let me give you another example. Think about a lot of the crusades, the evangelist crusades that you see, and sometimes they have extremely impressive numbers. Some at the height can fill 80,000 seat domes, right? And we think, wow, that is an accomplishment. Well, maybe. The reason why I say that is because 99% of the audience are already churched people. They're already Christians. So where's the true evangelism at? And even if we wanted to say that those in the 80,000 seat domes, that's only a fraction. If you think about, you go around to all the metropolitan areas, it's only a fraction of people. But do you know who is in every corner of the earth? Believers. You are. I am. And despite all of those esteemed, famous evangelists who fill these auditoriums, they may never come to your neighborhood. They may never come to your park, your school, your church, but you are there. And that is why you're the salt of the earth and you're the light of the earth. Now I'm going to pack this more because there's some stuff that we really want to get into. I'm going to pack this. But all right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. As always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. And also subscribe to the Bible Made Plain and Simple. The Bible Plain and Simple. Don't forget to add comments. You're welcome to add comments. Add them to the comment section. All comments are welcome. I will see you in the next study.